Assalamualaikum and hello. My name is Ainun and this is my partner Dania. First of all, we all first of all, we would like to thank you for taking the time to join us today. We really appreciate your willingness to share your experience and thoughts with us. So, before we start with our questions, could you briefly introduce yourself and share a little bit about your experience or background?
Yeah, sure. Thank you for reaching out. My name is Amina. I'm currently pursuing masters in sociology and anthropology at International Islamic University Malaysia. I've been to Malaysia almost like 1 year now, and yeah, that's a bit about me.
Alright. So, without further ado, let's begin with our first questions. First question will be, how has English influenced popular culture in your country, such as social media, entertainment, or education?
Okay, so I would say people, especially younger generations, are more in line with using English while they're posting, especially if they have international friends. So previously, maybe the language used to be Russian or Azerbaijani, but nowadays there's more tendency to use it even while posting or while tweeting. And there are some common phrases and trends where they use on Instagram, like specific catchwords. Even the captions will be in English, whereas previously maybe they used to be in English in Russian. So just for a bit of context, Azerbaijan used to be part of Soviet Union. So as part of their legacy, they used Russian. So our like previous generations, they used to communicate in Russian and read and learn, but nowadays it's changing. And in terms of entertainment, I would say for the film industry, when you go to cinemas, there's a great deal of like options. You can choose in English, in Azerbaijani or Russian as well. Um, and what was the other thing you asked? Was social media, entertainment, and what was the
Education.
education? Oh, so as I mentioned, because of being part of Soviet Union, Russian was compulsory, but nowadays it has been lifted. So people have the right to choose either Russian or English as the second language that they will learn at school. So the kids are learning English, especially in international schools or the schools that have high ranks. The kids, I mean, students will learn and like speak English almost like a native. Whereas at public schools and government schools, the English is mostly like not conversational; it's mostly textbook English. So they will not really have the spoken command of it. I hope it answers your question.
Alright, that's interesting to hear. Thank you for sharing how English has influenced popular culture in your country. Moving on, how has learning English benefit people in your country academically or professionally?
Hmm. Okay. So previously, majority of students would go to local universities, but nowadays, with IELTS, TOEFL, SAT, so the language certificates and all, they have the tendency to go to different universities abroad. Um, sorry. So usually, students will spend the last 2 years of their education learning English and preparing for the major tests so that they can obtain the language certificate and pursue their studies internationally. And apart from that, professionally, there are some international companies and NGOs. So where not students, but the working professionals, they have the option to use English as their medium, whether it's in terms of communication, emails, or even at their workspace. So, and apart from that, so the academically, there are some NGOs where students are doing their extracurriculars. The English could also be used there. One of them is like ISEC, which is an international organization, youth-led organization. So students would be enrolled and they would use the English like academically and also extracurricularly. Um,
great to know that English has provided academic and professional opportunities for many people. Next question is, do you think young people in your country use English differently from older generation, and why?
Sure. So, as I mentioned earlier, the older generation would only use Russian, and the majority of them wouldn't even know English because it was not compulsory, and Russian was the like substitute language. Maybe just late generations who had, let's say, different upbringing from their parents, they would learn English themselves. But yeah, compared to their predecessors, they didn't learn English or they didn't have to use it. But nowadays, as the Russian is being replaced by English, so you would see students and younger generation learn it and practice it more often. So I would say, as a closure, English was almost non-existent previously, but nowadays it's predominantly being used.
That's a good point. Thank you for sharing your perspective on the differences between younger and older generations. Moving on, in what situation do people in your country usually use English instead of their native language?
I think it would have to do with specific circles where, let's say, they're elite or they're, let's say, they want to catch up with their friends, so they would use English to sound like more like a cool person. Um, but other than that, maybe like some specific schools or NGOs, if you're part of it, you have this, let's say, social status. So students, even their native language is Azerbaijani, they would just use it amongst themselves. So that's one thing. And some parents and older generation, they look down upon it. They don't really appreciate it, but it's being kind of changing now. So it's kind of popular culture, being part of popular culture and keeping up with the trend. So they would just use it here and there, and specifically among their circles. And sometimes you would just see them bump into them in public transportation and different places. So you would see these are like the cool kids that they speak English.
That's very interesting. It gives us a better understanding of when English is commonly used in your country. Next is, are there any English words that are commonly pronounced differently in your country compared to how native speakers pronounce them?
Actually, there are a lot of them. So for those who do not come from, let's say, privileged background or let's say international schools or high-ranking schools, mostly they learn English like almost from textbooks. So they don't heavily rely on the pronunciation. So they will just sometimes read the words as if it's written, or they will be major pronunciation mistakes. So I wouldn't say there's a specific word, but there are a lot of them, especially the complicated words and so on. So yeah, there are a lot of them that are being mispronounced, and the teachers even sometimes they would teach it wrong because they don't really have the spoken back command of it. Yeah.
That's fascinating examples. Thank you for explaining on how pronunciation differs in your country. Now I will pass the next question to my partner Danya.
Okay, next question is, how would you compare the natural speaking rhythm of English speakers in your country with that of British or American speakers?
Okay, so I would say there's a major divide, like the two groups. So one group is speaking, and they sound almost like native, and they learn and they polish their language by watching TV series or YouTubers. So their English is really good, and pronunciation you wouldn't really find mistakes. But the other group where they don't have the spoken command, they don't really practice it more, so they will have a heavy Azerbaijani accent when they speak English. So you can see the divide when they speak the language. And so yeah, yes, there is one group who improve themselves and stuff, but the other group, on the other hand, unfortunately, they just lag behind and they don't really sound well.
Got it, got it. Thank you for sharing your thoughts on speaking rhythm. Since pronunciation is closely related to how people speak, let's move on to our next question about pronunciation feedback. Okay. Have you ever received comments about your English pronunciation from foreigners or native English speakers? What were they?
Yeah, I definitely received, especially when I was at high school and early years of my undergraduate, while I was being involved at NGOs and international circles, they would say, "Oh, your English is good. How did you learn it? Or you sound like native." That happened. But nowadays, I feel like we don't really receive it anymore because it is being associated with something else. So like why would people focus on accents or where you come from? So that's why I think it's a little bit changing. People avoid, let's say, commenting on certain people's English or accent because it might be conceived as negative.
Nice. That's very interesting to hear. Since pronunciation often influences how accents are perceived, let's discuss your opinion on native and local English accent. Okay. Do you think it is important for speakers from your country to adopt a native English accent, or do you think they should keep their localized accent?
Um, I feel like as long as they can be understood, there is no need to. I mean, of course, they can improve, but there is no such a necessity to, sound like native. And I think it's part of resistance where you have the accent, you carry your background and culture with that, so people know that you're not from US, UK, or one of those English-speaking countries. But at the same time, if you have the means, if you're good at language, why not to improve it? So it goes both ways. But I wouldn't say it's a negative thing to sound more like a native, but also for those who cannot change it, who sound very, let's say, heavy when they speak. I don't see the problem there either.
Thank you for your perspective. Besides accent, another important aspect of pronunciation is stress. Let's talk about word stress and sentence stress in English. Compared to
Mm.
your native language, how difficult is it to learn where to place stress in English words and sentences? Can you give me some examples?
Okay, so that's one of the biggest challenges for Azerbaijani learners because in Azerbaijani language, you pronounce the words the way they are written, and stress falls on the same, let's say, syllable. It's very common, but English, if different words have different stress, and if they have suffix, the stress changes, etc. But so I feel like this is one of the most common challenges because they don't really learn how the word is specifically pronounced unless they go into uh, dictionaries, online dictionaries, and they play how the word is pronounced. So that remains as a challenge. And I would say if I were to give an example, let's see. Um, I cannot think of example right now. Sorry, but it's mostly the one of the long words where they would just to avoid the, let's say, the burden, they would just place the stress on the first syllable. So yeah, it remains as one of the biggest challenge, I would say.
Alright, thank you. Since pronunciation and stress can sometimes affect communication, for our final question, let's discuss any experiences of miscommunication with native English speakers. Okay, have you ever experienced any miscommunication when speaking with a native English speaker?
Personally, I have never experienced any such issue because when growing up, when I was learning English, I would always rely on online dictionaries and I would specifically look at the pronunciation. So for me, it was not a challenge, and part of it stems from me having interest in languages. But for the others, for the great majority, it remains as a challenge. And sometimes I would be in circles where there are different Azerbaijanis, and when they communicate, I would say they have the challenge and they're being interrupted, and several times on occasion they're being asked to repeat what they meant. But yeah, for me, alhamdulillah, it was not a challenge, but I have witnessed it among different groups and different people.
Right, thank you for your responses. Okay, I think that concludes our interview. We truly appreciate your time and valuable insights. Thank you once again for your participation, and we wish you all the best. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you so much. Wishing
Thank
you
you so
success as
much.
well.
Bless you.